Hello everybody and welcome. It's Morgana here with today's video. In this week's watercolour tutorial I'm going to be demonstrating for you this lovely simple stormy sea and sky scene. So as you can see, I'm beginning today with a piece of Arches watercolour paper from my rough pad taped onto my board. This is 140 pound weight paper, size 9" by 12". And I've got it taped down flat, but my board propped at an angle of around 45 degrees, so the water is running downwards, and that's going to help with the approach I take to creating these lovely simple rainy old storm clouds. But for now, all I'm doing is just really thoroughly wetting the top part of the paper, that top 2/3 that's going to be our big old rainy sky. And for our first colour, I'm introducing a touch of alizarin crimson hue. I know now a lot of you are going, what? Because this is not quite the sort of colour you'd be used to seeing in a sky painting. However, I think this gives a lovely sort of glow, like an underglow from those stormy clouds and stormy colours that I'm going to put on over the top. So just bear with me on this one and trust the process. So now I'm using my larger brush. This is a large 2" flat wash brush. And I'm layering in a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of Van Dyke brown, and a little bit of Payne's grey. See all those colours sweeping in there, and I'm going over a little bit over the red, the alizarin crimson, that I've put in, but I'm leaving that sort of that pale patch over where we've got that lovely dark sweep of Payne's grey. You can still see it peeping through there, and all I'm doing is just layering up these lovely rich dark colours into a really interesting layered sky. Because I'm using this lovely thick cotton paper, you can see the colours as I put them on, they just diffuse and mingle straight away, which is a huge advantage in watercolour paper. And now for the for the party trick, we're going to turn the board sideways. So we're painting sideways, and I'm dabbing on, as you can see, some really nice thick paint here along the top, coming down towards the right hand side, so where the bottom of the painting is now. This is a lovely rich dark mixture of the 3 storm colours that I was using earlier. So we've got some Van Dyke brown, we've got some ultramarine, and we've got some Payne's grey. And now as we tip the board back the right way up, you can see almost straight away the water and the paint that we've put on there quite thickly is starting to run down into where the sky is already nice and wet, but not quite as wet. So it's not diffusing softly, we're getting these lovely little rain sort of marks there, and it's just starting to come down really prettily. You can add in at this point some more cloud detail if you like, or you can adjust the paint if it's not dark enough for you. You can see I'm just coming in here with my mop brush, just adding in a few little bits and bobs, little detail into the cloud whilst that paint is still running. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this to dry. I'm going to show you here we're getting this lovely sort of softness, this granulation, just rain running down. And it's as simple as that. It's a lovely effect, really easy to do with watercolour. And I'm going to leave it to dry standing upright so the paint is still moving. And this is what I ended up with. This is now dry, so I'm going to peel off this masking tape that's been protecting the sea. And you do sometimes end up with a little bit of wet paint there and water where it's run in. You can see I somehow managed to sort of smear it across the bottom part of the white paper there because I am clumsy. But that's not to worry because we're going to be painting over that, so that's not going to make any difference. The sky is dry. You can see we've got this lovely glow coming in underneath that big old rainy storm cloud. As I said, you can't tell that there's alizarin crimson under there, but I think it gives this whole painting just a really nice glow, which I'm going to try and echo in the sea here. You can see I'm using again my large wash brush, and I'm coming in and doing a little bit of dry brush over this Arches rough paper, which picks it up really well because the paper is really highly textured, so it picks up the paint on the bristles of the brush and just keeps it on the top surface of the textured part of the paper. Colour-wise, you can see I'm just using exactly the same colours as I used in the sky, so we've got a nice little blend of Payne's Grey, Ultramarine and a touch of Van Dyke Brown. And now I'm just going to start building up a little bit of headland here with my mop brush. So we've got the dry brush is going to be the sea, we've got that light sparkling off the surface of the water, left plenty of white space there, and I like having it in these sort of very obvious sort of dry brush scratched horizontal lines, because to me that's the wild waves sort of rolling in from the deep ocean coming into shore. So all I'm doing is putting in a little rocky headline, a little bit of rocky shoreline here with some rich paint, again with the Van Dyke Brown mixed with a bit of Payne's Grey here, really nice and rich dark paint. And so I'm just going to do the same on the left hand side here as well. And you can bring these little rocky outcrops as far into the painting as you like. So you can see I've just pulled those rocks a little bit further into the sort of mid-ground here, and just use a really light touch and just get them going as far along as you want. And try not to go too overboard here and leave plenty of that lovely dry brush showing, so you've got that lovely light reflected in the ocean, particularly in that sort of central patch here, that central patch of the sea, which is reflecting that lovely glow in the sky that we've got coming in just under the rain cloud. So all I'm going to do here is just work on building up a little bit of the texture of the rock. This is a loose painting, but we want it to look a little bit realistic, so I'm just going to dab in and dab out the paint just to make sure we get those lovely sort of differential marks, so it doesn't look like just one big old blob of dark paint at the front there. A fun little technique you can do for this sort of thing is you can scrape into the paint to create sort of a rocky texture. I'm using the edge of one of my tiny palette knives here, but a lot of people like to use a store card or an old credit card or something like that. The corner of that is a nice rounded shape, and you can scratch in quite easily and create these lovely sort of simple textural effects into the rock, just as long as you've got some nice rich paint and it's still nice and wet. You can see I'm not going too overboard here, but the edge of the palette knife has just gotten a little bit of interesting texture into that foreground, giving us these lovely little interesting rocky bits that I'm now just going to go over with a finer brush and some darker paint, and just put in a little bit of detail. So these are dry now, I should probably say. I'll just put this to one side, dried off those rocks. They've come up really nicely. Now all I'm going to do, now that the paint's not going to move around when I put more on, is to just come in with my fine brush and a little bit of Payne's Grey. Just give a little bit of extra detail here and there, just where it looks like it needs it. And if you make a mistake, don't be afraid to just grab a clean piece of tissue or kitchen towel or anything clean and absorbent and just dab it out quickly while the paint is still wet. Usually it'll lift right off and give you a second chance. Now I'm just going to add in a little handful of seabirds, gulls or cormorants perhaps, or petrels, albatrosses, call it as you see it. Still these lovely wide-winged seabirds flying up here in the flying in the face of the storm, racing the clouds home perhaps. So I'm just using my fine detail brush and just drawing in these elegant sort of soft, really flattened, soft V shapes, trying to get a natural sort of curve to the wing. And I'm using Payne's Grey to do this. Trying not to put in too many this time. I think I always tend towards putting in too many birds, but then as vices go, I don't think that's a particularly bad one. And now just to give a little extra touch of detail to the birds and make them pop out a little bit more, I'm using an opaque white, so I'm using white gouache here, but you can use an opaque white watercolour as well, something like zinc white or titanium white, both of which I believe are opaque colours. And again, my really fine brush, I'm just going along the upper edge of the wings of these birds and putting in a white line to just shadow that dark line that I put in. Of course, often you get sort of gulls and albatrosses, they have this sort of white and grey or white and black wing combination, and I think this just helps them to stand out a little bit more against that dark background and just gives that extra little level of detail. And while I've got my opaque white gouache out, I'm going to add a little bit of sea spray on these rocks, so I'm using a texture brush. This is a tree and texture brush, but you can use any raggedy old brush or a stippling brush, whatever you use for texture. I'm just dabbing it quite heavily into the white gouache, keeping it quite thick, and then just dabbing it on top of the, just sort of across the top of the rocky headland that I've just put in here, in patches, not just doing it all across the top, just here and there, and building it up with these lovely little natural looking dots that just looks like these bursts of sea spray coming up where the waves are crashing against that rocky headland. And there we are, that's all there is to it. That's the finished painting for today. So thank you everybody so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this. I really hope you got something out of it, enjoyed the process and seeing how easily we can create that really super dramatic, simple, rainy sky with that lovely sea underneath. So thank you again everybody for watching. Don't forget to check out my Patreon page, which is linked below for more videos like this one. I hope you're all well, whatever you're up to, wherever you are in the world today, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon in the next video.